Madam Chair, we're ready to go.
All right, awesome. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order for the City of Riverside Planning Commission for November 18th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Denning,
Here.
Mr. Hairston,
Present.
Mr. Owens, Mr. Rogers,
Here.
Mr. Vasquez.
All right. Is there a motion to excuse the absent members?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to excuse Mr. Vasquez and Mr. Owens. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Additions or corrections to the agenda. At this time, is there any additions or deletions or corrections to the agenda? Okay.
Staff does not have any.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to approval of agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as published?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as published. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Moving on to the approval of minutes. Y'all should have received a copy either via email or printed copy of the minutes from the last meeting. If there's no corrections, the chair would entertain a motion to approve as published.
I move to approve the October 21st, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes as submitted.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the October 21st, 2024 Planning Commission minutes as submitted. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, before we start with our public hearing, I'd like to just make a few comments. One, if you'd like to speak, you can pick up a slip in the back of the room. It's a half page. Fill that out. Present it to Ms. Holt down here on the end, and she'll make sure that I get it to call upon you during public comment. When you're called upon to come to the podium, please come to the podium, state your name, your address, and read the oath, because this is considered a hearing, so you must state that before speaking. Also, you will be given 3 minutes to speak, except for applicants, they're given longer, and they will be called upon during the presentation of the entire case. And staff is not held to the 3 minutes either. All right. You can't hear?
He can hear you, but when he comes up, he can't hear that well.
Okay, no problem. Okay, we'll make whatever happen we need to. All right, so we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. The first case is PC case number 240017. This is for 2600 Harshman Road. It's a waiver to allow the combined accessory structure's footprint to exceed that of the principal structure. This is for partial ID number I390020400027. We will start with staff's report first.
I, Naya Holt, affirm that the testimony I'm about to give before the Planning Commission is correct to the best of my knowledge. Address is 5200 Springfield Street. As stated, this is a case involving a waiver to allow the combined footprint of the accessory structures on the property to exceed that of the principal structure at the address at 600 Harshman Road in Riverside, Ohio.
Is it
I'm sorry,
26?
I'm sorry, 2600 Harshman. This is the aerial, and the subject site is outlined in blue. You can see that this property is 3 acres, which is a larger property in Riverside. This property came to our attention when we received a complaint. We investigated, actually on the adjacent property. But after speaking with the applicant, we were coming to a solution by constructing a new accessory structure here where they could store their equipment to maintain both of their properties due to the large size of the sites. This is something that is not unique. We've seen this before you, people coming with larger sites wanting to build larger structures so they can store the equipment to maintain those larger properties. So we'll go so you can see what the actual site looks like with some site photos. This is the existing single-family home that's on the structure, on the site. This is the adjacent property across Harshman Road. So this is adjacent property to the north, what that looks like. This is the adjacent property to the south on Harshman. And this is the proposed location of the accessory structure that would be built back here. And now we'll look at that location a few angles. And let me know if you need me to go back to any of the photos. So this is staff's finding. We do find that the waiver is adequately justified, and we do recommend approval with a few conditions. We are recommending approval because there is not an adverse effect on adjacent property owners due to where the structure is being proposed to be placed, and that the structure will assist the property owner in complying with other zoning code standards. Also, the proposed structure will be set back further than the minimum distance required for the zoning district. And you will see a chart in your staff report comparing the requirements, the minimum setbacks with what's being proposed in the site plan. There are some conditions that are being recommended, such as building a compliant driveway to the structures. That is in our code that we have a driveway that goes to a storage building or a garage. And of course, that they get the required permits for such a structure. And I will let you know that the applicant has already applied for the permit anticipating your approval. Like I said, staff is recommending that. So these are your required actions to consider this application, and you can approve it as it's presented, approve with conditions. If you find that it does not meet the standards, you are within your rights to deny it, or if you need more information, you can postpone it to a date certain. Are there any questions?
Any questions for staff?
Do we have
Into the mic, please.
pictures of what the potential structure would look like?
I don't have any elevations. But on page, I'll say, about 5 of the staff report is the site plan. And the applicant is here, and he can tell you more about the structure that he's proposing.
Anything else? Okay. All right. All right, at this time, would the applicant like to speak? Yeah. This is your opportunity to speak with not being under public comment and being restricted.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. It's fine. I have one at home, too. It's all good.
name is John Bowman. We actually reside at 2608 Harshman Road. We own 2600 and 2620 also. Let's see, deferring to the testimony about to give, the planning commission is the correct best of my knowledge at the oath. The only thing that I see is you've added a driveway to me now. And this cost just keeps going up and up and up. And I need a building. I wanted to build a building years ago, totally couldn't build one then. I'd like to get my equipment out of the weather. I still have questioned the fact that it's considered commercial equipment, and I'll deal with that in another way. Because I see commercial equipment all over town. In fact, I grabbed a couple of photos. I don't intend to get in on that because I don't care to be discussing my neighbor's issues. But if you want my equipment, my trailers, and my trucks out of my driveway, the only way that I can address that is to put them in a building. And as I've mentioned before, we've got a very low density lot. I have 9 acres in total, 3 acres on that lot. And the equipment that I have is to maintain that property. You do not maintain 9 acres like you do a little quarter-acre lot. It takes serious equipment to do it. Okay, my homes are not gonna make better homes and gardens, don't really care. But they suit me. If you drive by, you see that my yards are kept up, my properties are kept up. My vehicles are all licensed and insured in my private name. There is no commercial equipment on my property. But that's what I have.
Explain what type of building you're wanting to build.
What?
Explain what type
Oh,
of building you're
what I-
wanting to build,
okay.
please. Thank you.
What I want to build is a single structure. I don't know what I'm gonna do, metal, most likely will be metal frame. Will be planned on a certain size, it may change a little bit, but I need to build a building long enough, deep enough to store my equipment in. The building that I proposed would give me 6 bays at least, and it would take at least 10 a month to get my equipment out of my driveway.
Do you plan on having a concrete floor, or is it more of a pole barn?
Again, it would depend on cost, because the equipment that I use doesn't necessarily need a concrete floor. Concrete floor would be nice, I would quote it both ways. Okay. But as far as that goes, I have pickup trucks, I have enclosed trailers, I have what I call my equipment trailers. So right now, they're sitting in the open, being run by the weather, so I just really need a structure to get them out of the weather.
Okay.
So I will quote everything, and see where my costs come in at before we do the final decision. And then, as mentioned before, or someone mentioned to me before that post-frame buildings were no longer allowed in the city, and I was told that is not a correct statement. What I'm planning on doing is a metal structure at this time, at least with some insulation in it, and overhead garage doors. Okay?
All right. Any questions for the applicant from commissioners? Okay. Thank you very much, sir. All right. I have no notices from anyone wishing to speak on this issue at this time. So, Ms. Holt, and I might be referring to an old UDO. I've been here a while. But at one time, I thought if it was a concrete floor, it had to have a drive going all the way to it. But if it was more of a pole barn, it did not, because it was more of a barn.
So how our code is written now is that if it is a garage or an accessory structure, it does have to have a code-compliant driveway to it. You cannot just drive over grass, or it has to have a compliant driveway to that structure. So, like,
Just
if
that
it's like
structure or the other accessory structures?
So to that structure, if he's going to use that garage as.
Well, we can only talk about the 3 acres it's being put on, because unless the lots are combined,
Right, yeah,
it
that's true.
wouldn't matter, but. So,
May I ask?
So it's not, yeah. So
Um,
it's like a shed that you're talking about that's not going to have.
well, pole barn is not a shed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That would not require a driveway.
A pole barn can have overhead doors or sliding doors, but most of the time it only has either a dirt or gravel floor. So that's what I'm asking about. If it was a gravel floor, because that's like what a lot of farm equipment or equipment used to take care of a property would be stored in, they wouldn't have concrete floors. If that was the case, and it was more of a structure similar to a pole barn, instead of using the word garage, would the applicant have to put in the driveway?
If it's just a pole barn, our code just has it as, under the accessory structure, just as a garage.
Is it, so just to help translate, there's not a distinction in our code between a garage and a pole barn?
Correct.
So any accessory structure requires a driveway? Unless it's a shed, like a tough
Yes.
shed?
Correct,
But this would not be a tough shed because of square footage?
correct.
Okay. Okay. All right, any other questions, or you want to move on to? Okay.
I think she wanted to.
Since you're the applicant, I will allow you to address. Yes, you still need to come forward to state your name, your address, and take the oath.
I'm Donna Bowman. I live at 2608 Harshman Road, and I affirm to the testimony that I'm about to give is that for the planning commission is correct to the best of my knowledge.
Thank you, ma'am.
Where we were looking at placing it, because it's coming back closer to our principal home there, we're at 2608, we were going to use that driveway to go into it. So therefore, that I wanted to bring that out, since we own both of the properties there. So that way, if it would, we would have a driveway to it.
Were you planning to get like a shared access easement then? Just in case down the road you,
Should we decide to sell later on, I would have it resurveyed and pull that section away from the little house out front. In other words, I would have it resurveyed and say that we would be keeping the back 2 acres if we chose to ever sell it.
okay,
And then only sell maybe
The
the
front,
little
okay,
house
so
and the
you would-
little garage out front.
okay, do a replat.
Yes, so
Okay,
it would still be,
okay.
maintained by us, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Seeing that there's no more comments, we'll close the public hearing for discussion among commissioners. All right, commissioners. Any further questions for staff, or are we ready to make a decision? Anybody have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the design waiver under PC Case 24-001726 Harshman Road with the conditions listed in the staff report based on the report by the City of Riverside and its comprehensive plan and evidence and testimony that was heard here today.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve PCE case number 240017, 2600 Harshman Road, with the conditions as described in the report from staff. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Hairston?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mrs. Denning?
Yes, motion passes. Please follow up with Ms. Holt on next steps and discussing the other matter. Okay? Thank you. All right. We have no more public hearings on the agenda for today, so we're going to move into what our agenda calls for as staff discussion topics. So the first one, Ms. Holt, I'll turn over to you for the December meeting.
Yes, this is carrying over from a discussion that had started during our October meeting. Remember what last month was? And it seemed to be that several commissioners would not be able to attend the regular December meeting, so I wanted to workshop some other dates. Those are on the agenda, either the 4th or the 11th of next month. I would recommend, just for staff's administrative side, the 11th. Those are both Wednesdays.
I had thought we also discussed if there was no need for business, that we would not have to
There
have a
is.
meeting.
We have
There
received
is,
the
okay.
application.
Yeah, we, without saying too much, I mean, there's important business that we do need to talk about before the end of the year.
And I think the discussion was really more that we would just prefer not to have a meeting if there was nothing, no cases.
Yeah.
But if there was cases, I thought the majority of us could be there at the regular meeting.
I would not be able to be
You
on the 16th.
can't, okay. Okay, so,
Yeah, and he was not the only one that I heard that from.
okay, all right. I thought it was just, would prefer not to if, it would, but, okay, so staff would prefer it on the 11th. Is that just putting the packet together in that, or you have other conflicts?
Notices and that sort of thing.
I would prefer the 11th over the 4th.
All right, I'll make it work. Y'all can explain to my brother why I can't be at his birthday dinner.
Could meet earlier.
We could, if you would like.
Well, I think earlier conflicts a little bit with Jonathan getting here from work, and Harold
Okay.
and David. I know by then schedule should be loosening up some, but, so it's fine. I haven't missed one in a while, so. So the 11th,
At 6:30 at 6:30 on the 11th still. Okay.
you'll send that out to everybody.
It's just that one potential case, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so,
I mean, they've already got everything in, so it's good to go.
Okay.
I just need the date.
So maybe what we can do to, it probably won't matter, but maybe we just keep the agenda short to just that one case and move on. Okay. All right, then, December 11th. Do I need a motion?
I would suggest you do a motion just for the
Okay.
record.
I'll make a motion to move the December 2024 City of Riverside Planning Commission meeting from Monday, November 16th to Wednesday, December 16th to Wednesday, December 11th.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to move the December meeting from the 16th to the 11th. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. I would probably recommend to get that out because of the other commissioners not being here tonight, like, really quick, because we weren't thinking we were going to have anything. Okay, Ms. Holt, APA membership interest.
Yes, so the American Planning Association offers group memberships to planning commissioners and Board of Zoning Appeal members. So if you all are interested in that, I can get that together and ready for 2025.
And you said they have like lots of trainings and.
They do.
A lot of
and there are
webinars and
discount
stuff.
trainings for those who are members.
I'm
sure Chris
interested.
could attest to
Yeah.
that as well.
I think it sounds good. If it's a group, I think
Yes,
we
and the
all
group
probably
rate
should be.
is discounted as well.
So if it saves money by just doing the whole group, I think
Mhm.
that would be better.
And I know we have that required training, but the webinars you would get the emails, you wouldn't have to come through me, they come straight to you. Greater access, there's lots of benefits I would think you would have.
Okay. All right. Do we need a motion for that?
I would just need to know interest, so I could start that ball rolling.
That's more administrative. The city staff can follow up and take care of that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right.
And the last thing,
Yes.
I will just, we have been working on updating our UDO, our Unified Development Ordinance, our zoning code, and it's been a process we started this summer. To get that done, we've been working with ZoneCo, and one of their representatives here, I'll let him introduce himself and tell us where they're at.
Okay.
I need the speaker on. Will it stay on if I push it?
It's always on.
It's always on.
If you're going to talk this direction, though, you might pull it to, or use the other one. Just because it'll, there you
Glad I
go.
wasn't over to whisper.
You got it, Todd.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having me here this evening. My name's Todd Kensky. I'm a senior city planner with ZoneCo. Just a little bit of my background. I am a fairly recently retired public servant. Spent my last 6 years as the planning director for the city of Dayton. Have a little bit of familiarity with Riverside. I previously the planning director in Hamilton County for about 10 years, so I've been around the block a little bit. All that said, I pride myself on always being present and on time. I arrived here half an hour early for tonight's meeting. And last month, when you expected me, I was out on a walk with my wife in Cincinnati, and I had the meeting on Tuesday on my schedule. So Nia and I have had a few little jokes about that. I think she was messing with me a little bit. She sent me the wrong meeting date, I think just to check and see if I'm paying attention for this month. But we're all good. So anyway, so what I'm here tonight to do is try to give you a presentation. Do you have that? Can you pull that up?
It'll be up here just a second.
So, while she's pulling that up, so what ZoneCo has been asked to do, contracted to do, is to really give an evaluation of approach, look at your current regulations, and make a recommendation to the city about how we're gonna move forward with going through your UDO and updating it. And so we spent some time this summer, and we've had some meetings with staff on a monthly basis. We came and talked to your steering committee once. We've been conducting a survey of our residents for several months. But that evaluation for us is not just what's, written down in code. It's really about trying to understand your community, understanding the needs of your community, understanding the history of your community, understand the challenges that the staff might have in administering your code, and then trying to put forward a proposal that really is what you need, right? One of the challenges that we have in zoning is that we have, and it's not a Riverside problem, it's a problem everywhere, is that we cut and paste, basically. We go and find what works in another community, and we just call it ours and change the name and move forward. And to some degree, that still happens. But I think what we've learned is that we need regulations that reflect your community, because this is going to sound kind of nerdy, but I feel like your zoning code and the words in it are a reflection of the values of your community. And when you take great care and great detail, and you get what you want, that becomes your identity, right? So when the development that happens out there on the, physically occurs, doesn't reflect what you think you should be getting, that's because the code was cut and pasted from somewhere else, right? So how do you get what Riverside needs? So anyway, so not to offend you, or so you know your community better than I do, but kind of some of the first impressions that we have is, kind of looking at the community is your commercial development is really on the corridors. You drive through the community. Part of it's just really how the history, having been a village and a township and merging together and being on the edge of Dayton and next to the Air Force Base and, in kind of the suburban fringe, but you're on the early end of the suburban, suburbanization. Those are just the way, things developed. And development really follows transportation patterns. And by and large, we're just getting around by car, so therefore your development is happening along your corridors. There's really not an identifiable town center. I mean, how do you know when you've gotten to Riverside? If I don't see the sign, or I don't see the pavement change, you don't know that you've arrived someplace new. I feel like, and I worked with Josh a little bit on this, with the COG, but, I think you're not fully benefiting from being next to the Air Force Base. I mean, this is the single site, largest employer in Ohio, and it just seems like Riverside would see more of the benefit. I know you can't control which way cars come out of the base, but if you just look at Riverside, if you just take it by itself and at the boundaries and you think, wow, this is next to this huge employer, why, it just really doesn't, for me, it doesn't really connect. Like, it really just seems like there should be more benefits, more businesses and more people, and just, just the character and just kind of thriving nature of the community. It's not a hit to saying that you're not doing well. It's just like, I feel like you could be doing better. And then, the other thing is, like, we look at the community and what uses aren't here, right? So what are the things, you know the things that you have that you don't like, but what are the things that you're missing, or what are the things that you have to drive to other communities to get? And those are the things that we, really try to look at. For example, do you have enough places for seniors to live? If you age in place and you decide you can no longer take care of this house, are there options for you in Riverside, or do you have to leave? As an example. And then the other thing is I noticed is that I just don't feel like there's a strong enough focus on the trail network. One of Greater Dayton's, huge assets that really is unique is the trail system. It is just incredible. I think for folks who live here, you don't realize how great it is, but when you leave, you see communities are really working hard to improve their networks, and it costs a lot of money. And Dayton was really ahead of the curve on that. I feel like there could be more focus on that. All right. Got the point somewhere? Oh, whoops. Let's see. Oops. Sorry. So one of the things that we like to do is we like to look at comprehensive plans. And, look at that plan, and you guys are on the heels of a fairly recent plan, and just figure out, what is in the plan, what are the goals that are in the plan that really have to have strong zoning regulations to make it happen. Because, the number one tool you have in your community outside of being able to write checks, quite frankly, are development regulations. You can give away tax money, or you can put money into a project if you happen to have that, at your disposal, but at the end of the day, the main thing that you control is either you own land or you have the development regulations. So with that in mind, then you should want to have the best regulations that you can possibly have, and they should really jive and mirror the goals that are in your comp plan. So if there are things in your comp plan that your zoning code won't let you do, or, doesn't have the right standards to make it happen, then you have to fix the code. This is moving slow. I'm not sure why it's taking so long. There we go. So I just went through your comp plan and looked at your zoning code and pulled out a few things. These are words that are right out of your comp plan, are things that you want to accomplish that are really related to development. For example, you want new growth and development that can create a distinct town center. Well, do you have regulations in your zoning code? They're going to make that happen. And if you don't, then we have to address that. New development and redevelopment that pays for itself in the long term. So that really, to me, is talking about character. It's also talking about density. Locations for new development, you want to make sure everything's accessible to all users and different modes of travel, and you want contemporary design standards. Do you have contemporary design standards in your code? Well, if you don't, then we have to put them in there. So anyway, I don't have to go through all that, but the point is, we've looked at your comp plan, and we've looked at your zoning code, and we're trying to figure out how does it align, where are the gaps, and so that's the role we play. So some of the limitations of the current code. Before I indict you on this, or indict your community on taking shots at your code. You need to understand this, is that zoning codes are like this everywhere. And in the last 5 years, really, there's been a big trend in the United States for communities to really bring their zoning codes into the current, vernacular and having the right kind of regulations. And one of the problems is that, and I've been working at this for a long time, is that earlier in my career, the approach was write zoning codes that planners can decipher. So we had to you had to call the planning department and say, what does this mean? And then planners would say, here's what it means, and they'd probably have a little cheat sheet where they had written notes and the interpretation manual. I mean, I've worked in communities where they had a separate book of interpretations, so you knew how to interpret what that regulation meant. And versus having a zoning code that the average person could open it and understand what it means. And I think we've finally decided that whether it's just that we're just done talking to people on the phone and explaining every regulation that there is, we really are trying to make this user-friendly, so people kind of understand, what they can build, how much of the lot they can cover, it's the height, all of those various standards that we want them to be able to understand and put it in a way that's easy for them to look at, have graphics, have tables. And so it's not such a, kind of mysterious kind of thing. So, so there are some graphics, there's limited, there's not a lot of tables, there's some. It's really about more how they're presented. You have long lists of uses and standards that are in there by district, rather than having them consolidated in one place. So someone can open the code and say, I want to build a car wash. So you literally, it's going to be a really nice one though. Anyway, so as an example, maybe I chose the wrong thing. I don't know. I want to build a multi-family building. I don't know, whatever it may be. I'm going to build a doctor's office. I can look on the left column and find the use, and then I can go across and find out what districts is allowed in, versus having to flip through every district and go through and scroll through all the uses. There's not a lot of standards on scale and massing and building design. One of the things we were looking at and talking with Naya about is that we have a lot of zoning districts where the zoning was adopted after the development occurred, and the required lot sizes are all bigger than everything that's there. And so it causes every one of those properties have to seek a variance every time they want to do something. And again, also a super common thing, and I think part of it is just the mentality of when zoning was adopted. The real proliferation of zoning was adopted in the 50s and 60s, and then those codes got cut and pasted, other places in the 70s and 80s, and there was this whole notion behind zoning that we need to spread people out, and so all the lots were made bigger. I mean, I've lived in Cincinnati for a long time, and there's areas that literally have 40-foot wide lots all over the place. And the zoning code required all those lots to be 60 feet wide. Every single time someone wanted to do something, you had to get a variance, and so it's really recognizing the built environment is there and having regulations that reflect what's there and make it easy for people to do what they want to do on the property and not have to go through some crazy process every time they want to make an investment in their house, and then they have to go through some, elaborate process. And you don't want that either. If you keep reviewing minor, additions, garages in the backyard, all that kind of stuff, and everyone needs a variance, that's a problem. Also, you guys are doing really well on parking. You have lots of parking in your community. Probably have more than you'll ever need. So I think we need to look at parking standards and decide, what's the future on that. I think there's also some other things that are needed, like there's this whole kind of movement and chatter within the zoning world about missing middle housing. So we're really good at single family and we're really good at high density multifamily, but the stuff in the middle, we don't really have a lot of places to build duplexes and cottage courts and those kinds of things. So we were take a good hard look at your zoning. I think unfortunately over time we've developed this mentality that if you don't live in a single family house, then somehow you're not equal to everyone else, or that somehow attached housing is bad. So really kind of getting at that and looking at where the housing needs are, and it's not necessarily to say we're going to change all the districts to allow 2 families or 3 families, but it's really looking at where are where are your single-family districts and where are areas where you should have maybe some other options. Again, trailside zoning, we mentioned that. And then, the other needs, we've been doing a survey, and we're gonna, I'm sure, we've seen lots of responses, and we haven't really started filtering through that yet, but we will, to try to understand what are the community's feelings about all of this. So, when you're faced with redoing your zoning code, whether it's your staff, whether it's a consultant, whether it's a community, there's different ways to do it. And we have for years and decades, or close to a century now, everything has been about separation of uses. And now there's a lot of different ways that communities are focusing their efforts, and zoning codes are starting to look a lot different. One is form-based codes. I think I hit it. There we go. So form-based codes is this just mentality of like, it's really less about use and more about form. It's not so much worried about, is it a 1, 2, or 3 family? Is it an office, or is it a medical office? Is it an accountant, is it an architect? Those kinds of differences. It's more about scale, massing, and where it is in the city. So in your community, so you basically have these different zones that you lay out, and then if you build in that zone, then they want the massing to be close. It could be close to the sidewalk. It could be, has to be 2 or 3 stories. It could have, as much detail as you want, but it's really less about use. It's more about form. And then there are character-based codes, which is it's kind of building on this form-based code, but it's more about really looking at what the building looks like. It's regulating basically architecture, if it's roof styles or window placement, that kind of stuff. And this is becoming more and more common, especially in dense areas, more affluent areas where they're building new urban areas. And a lot of these can even come with almost like a pattern book of sorts, where you have to actually look through it to figure out the architectural styles that are allowed. Then there's the use-based. And this is what we have been doing for years, where it's often called Euclidean style, where we separate the uses. We say where you can do it, where you can't do it. We make it really difficult for you to do mixed uses, there's a lot of control. And this is what we've all been doing, and we love doing it, so we keep doing it. So what zone code does is that we are more about trying to figure out. So let me back up. There's consultants who are out there who are like, I know what you need. You need what I sell you, right? And so there's form-based code developers out there. There's like 2 or 3 really big ones in the country, and they just, they see a nail, or you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So every community is like form-based code, and zone code has done that. But what we really want to do is look at the community and find out what are your needs. And so we kind of really play in this hybrid code area. So we might do part of your community as a form-based or some kind of, certain details for one area. We might leave the rest of it more of a separated use kind of setup. And so we really need to understand, what you need. And so in these kind of hybrid setups, we're really looking at distinct districts. So this is where this jumps out at us this approach jumps out at us in Riverside, because of you have the unique, kind of commercial corridors that really need the attention. And then you have your residential areas that they're pretty solid. And so it's like, why mess with what works? Maybe fix the zones so they match the lot sizes, but you really focus on the corridors. And these kind of codes are really about flexibility and adaptability. So, get the character that you want in the places that you need it, and do the hard work on the districts, and just really fix some of the regulatory stuff that you may be able to fix that really addresses everything. But leave districts that work well, just kind of leave them the way they are. And so, so just a little bit more, just so you know that we've thought about this a little bit. There we go. So I've kind of described this already. So, what are your existing development patterns? Let's find, where those are. Create the districts that are there. So this is kind of a little bit of a nuance. So in most communities, when you're looking at the Euclidean standards most of us use, you'll say like, okay, this is an office building. Office buildings have to have a minimum lot size of X. The height can only be this. The setbacks are this. The parking is this. And whether you build that office on the south side of town, in the heart of the city, out on the edge, wherever, the standards are all the same. Whereas when we go and look at a district approach, what we say is like, the character of this district should be, and we work with you to identify what that is. And so if you're building an office there, the office is gonna look differently than if you're building it on the edge of town where it's more suburban. So it's really about identifying those unique districts and then working with you to help develop the standards that will, hopefully at this point, we're talking about aligning with your comp plan. And so you get what you want, out of that district. So anyway, so that's kind of the general gist with the hybrid approach. So again, there's a little bit more here, just like, making sure that we're creating the places that add value to your community. And so we're really about regulating the things that matter rather than trying to regulate what you don't want. And I think we spend too often if you read through your zoning code, you're gonna find sections, I'm sure Mike could point out, and some of you have been around for, I could point them out, things that exist because one person did something you don't like. I mean, I've worked in communities where they call it, behind the scenes, they call it the something rule, It's like, that guy did that one thing and now we have to write a rule for it. And so I think that there's ways around that. So rather just, taking that defensive approach, it's more proactive instead of reactive. So, again, this is really talking, with your community, with your staff, trying to find out what works, what doesn't work, engage your citizens, and give you something that you can be proud of and represents the desires and the values, of your community. So one of the things that you'll see that would be different is that very easy to read tables, something that you can look at and understand. Is this a permitted use? Is this a conditional use? All in one place. Open book, you see it. The other thing, here's an example on the left here from Reynoldsburg, Ohio, where we kind of show you what the limitations are graphically, rather than you have to read front setback is this, rear imagine it in your head, draw it, show people. And this can be as detailed as you want it. It can be simple. I've seen in Reynoldsburg, I'm not sure I love the way they've done it because you go to Reynoldsburg and you pull up this district and it goes on for several pages and it tells you every standard for that district. Parking, landscaping, all that, signage. It's like that to me is like a mini chapter for each district, which is a lot. But there are parts of it I like. I like the dimensional stuff, like the way the graphics are, so you understand, what the purpose of this district is. So anyway, there's different ways to lay these things out graphically, so it's really easy for the user to just open it up and understand what are the rules for this district. And so, next steps. Well, we're here tonight talking to you all, and we're going to go talk to your council in December, which is on my calendar on the correct day.
Incidentally, we might have to move that, but we'll be in touch.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know, sooner than later. But we're going to kick off this process in earnest to really begin writing your code in January. And so we're going to take the public feedback whenever we finally close that, see what it says. We're going to really engage with your staff. I've been talking to Naya and her team already about what are the pain points in your current code. Where are the things that we really want to focus on, so that we're really dealing with that stuff, right out of the gate. So let me let me go on just a little bit further, just to give you a little bit more. So where we are, beginning in January, we'll be in this, what we call calibrate phase. So the first part is we diagnose it. So we looked at your code, try to find where the gaps are, where the problems are, look, talking to your staff, talking to your community, getting all the feedback we can, and us really looking at your code and trying to understand where it's, what works and what are the weaknesses. And then this is where the work really begins, where we start trying to understand what your regulations are and where we want to get to. And so we have a kind of a process that we use where we start, it's very, and I've kind of started, gave a little bit of a, I guess the cliff notes to Naya, and we look at uses. We try to understand what are the uses, right? If we can't get our heads around what the uses are going to be in your code, that's going to be a stumbling block. So what are the uses? How do we define those uses? And we look at, those are really important things. We have to look at dimensional standards. Where are the dimensional standards right? Where do they need to change? Are we going to change into districts? Understanding that going in is really important. Is there going to be any new remapping of any districts? Because that adds an extra amount of pain to the process. And that adds an educational component that we have to really tackle as well. But so we begin looking at what you have, where you want to be, and we start building that. And then when we've reached agreement on all that, then we write the code. And it's really that simple. And we kind of have a standard process that we use for that. What I like to do is we go through your code and look at how it's laid out, and then we look at how we would propose it, get agreement on a table of contents and approach. We get agreement on the district setups. Is that going to be visual? Is it just going to be written? How do we want to do that? How do we want to present that information? And obviously we have to reach agreement on, if we're going to create new districts along your corridors and what we're calling them, what do we want to achieve there? Do we want to change anything with signage, with parking requirements, all that? So it's, as I've described it to Naya, this is messy work. And there are not many companies in the country that just do zoning codes, and that's all we do. I mean, we dabble in property maintenance codes and historic, regulations and that kind of stuff, but it's pretty much land development, and it's almost 90% zoning codes. And it's a messy process. We have seen everything. We've seen codes that everyone loved, and then everyone doesn't love them, and we have to go make changes to them. But we have a bit of a process that we have kind of standardized to some degree, and it seems to work. And so I, to date, will be very complimentary to your staff. The staff wants to change things. There's communities that sign up for this, and you find out nobody on the staff really wants to change anything. And then it's a really big battle. So a lot of this is about communication. It's about how you want to present pieces of this, to your community, and what's the process for getting input. But we have a very transparent approach with the staff. We set up files that we share with them. So it's not like I just send them a document, ask them to redline it, and send it back. It's like we're giving them a live file and say, here it is. We're collaborating on this. So, but at the end of the day, we're going to deliver you code. We're going to map. If there's map changes, map. And hopefully at the end, it's a process that we're all happy about, and we love the final result. So that's kind of the caliber I just described all that. So that's it. So if there's questions, I'll try to answer those. If something I missed, Naya, please.
Yeah. So I'll just say we're working with a steering committee of residents. We are looking to add a local business owner to the steering committee when we start working on that calibration phase. But Todd is here because Planning Commission is going to be involved in this process. You guys are the keepers of the code, okay? So we really would.
You're the keeper, not the defender. Okay?
Yes.
It's a mental shift.
Yes.
And then the other thing I've said tonight, and I think this is really important for you to understand, We're not amending your code, we're rewriting it.
Correct.
Okay? So this is an expectation I was going to put out there, is one of the problems we run into in communities that we get to the end and they're like, I need a red line copy of the existing code. It's almost impossible to do that because we are going to be replacing wholesale big sections of it. We will show you where your current regulations have been embedded or modified or whatever, but this is a complete rewrite. We're going to hand you a new code. And some of the words may be the same, but by and large, it's going to be a replacement. So a red line would be basically me saying, well, here's chapter 1 redlined out, and here's the new chapter 1. And so it's an exercise, and I feel like unfortunately that we've gotten in a mentality of local government where we always want to know where the edits are. This is what, we're not editing writing an ordinance that gets adopted tomorrow or next week. We're writing something over the course of a year, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of input. We will provide a memo that describes the process, the things that have changed, those kinds of things. But this is a complete rewrite of your code. That challenges people sometimes because they want that red line, and it's really almost impossible to do that. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out now, get that on the record.
And that's something we've heard a lot from our residents, from our business owners. They want to see that change. And so I definitely encourage all of those listening at home or later, watching this later, to fill out that survey, attend the planning commission meetings that this is on the agenda, and the community meetings that we'll be having next year. Attend those meetings, give your input. This is a big process, a big project, and it's going to take all of our community and stakeholders' voices to make this the best code that it can be for the city of Riverside.
I don't want to preempt anybody's questions if they have any, but if I can just jump on the coattails here as well. One of the things that I really appreciate about ZoneCo and Todd's approach and the approach of their firm is just the adaptability of it all. And we've had this conversation, and of course, we've pointed it out here again this evening, which is just that given our unique geography and some of the constraints that we operate in, I think that approach will ultimately serve us really well in terms of creating an end product that is brand new, but also as adaptable as we need it to be. One of the points that I made at the budget workshop last week with the city council is that we continue to operate in an environment where our ends don't meet. So we're deficit spending. One of the best ways to come out of that is to create an environment where businesses want to come and grow and thrive. That's one of the headwinds that we have compared to a lot of our peers, is that we just don't have the job space. And we don't have a code that supports our efforts as a community to go attract those jobs or to go attract those new residents and grow that base. So I really want to hammer that point home because I don't think it's an understatement when we talk about how communities thrive or they start to wither. We have the opportunity here to rewrite and replace our entire code with something that's going to support our efforts to do that going forward, and that aligns so well with how we're positioned with the Right Pack COG, with all this work that we're talking about at the Woodman, out here at Woodman, with Springfield Harshman and the Safe Streets for All projects. All of this wind is in our sails, and really the work that we are all doing together is work that will build that foundation over the next 12 to 18 months to equip us to go start chasing bigger fish and actually attracting higher and better quality developments to our community that will help us get ahead of the curve. So thank you, Todd, for the overview of your firm and your work. I know I'm really looking forward to this process because it's just one more thing I can hang our hat on when I go do all the regional cheerleading about everything we're trying to do here. So I'm really excited for it.
And Todd, I will need a red line of it to codify it.
It's okay. You can just redline the whole thing.
You'll have to do that, yeah.
We'll get there.
To get it codified, I have to delete it and put the new in.
Well, just delete it all and just put it all in.
That'd be great when it all comes forward.
Your law director will help you, don't worry.
Well, I'm glad to see that we're going to try to be more proactive versus reactive. I do think lots of pieces of our code has been copied and pasted from communities that are nowhere near, it was nowhere near where we're at. And I'm hoping that we can also not just make it better for businesses to come in or developers to come in, but we can make it better and easier to understand and easier for the residents, as you said, to be able to do what they want to do on their property. Because I do think we've come up with some unique challenges. I think Naya has finally seen that and someone willing to actually say she sees that versus just telling an applicant no all the time, which I believe used to happen quite a bit. They just come in and they say, nope, that doesn't fit our plan. And so they were turned away, as the gentleman just stated here tonight. And I want to see us really work on some of those little things that we have seen I've seen over the last 15. Tony has seen for a lot more years than me, where, our hands sometimes feel like they're tied on what we can tell residents and businesses, of course. There's some things we get way too down in the weeds on in our code and other things that maybe don't give us enough guidance. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope that the steering committee, I'm assuming, is going to have pretty regular meetings.
So the steering committee will be asked them to review the districts. We want their input. We are going to have them reading those sections. We need them as residents and stakeholders of the city to be part of that process. We need their input. So when those different sections come in, we need to have their red pins out.
And will, once you have put things together, another opportunity for the steering committee before it hits planning commission to review those changes and make sure that was at least listed in a way that a resident can understand, as well as bringing forth the intent that maybe was meant, because two people can say the same thing but say them very differently, and sometimes even change the meaning.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we'll work with Naya on a process, whether it's us presenting or it's staff presenting, however that you want to do that. But yeah, this will be a very deliberate kind of approach. And we'll deliver it in the way that best fits, the community. I've dealt with some communities, they're like we work with the staff and we work with the steering committee, and then what they want is they want a draft. Because the one thing about zoning is, I'm not saying this is what is the best way, I'm saying this is how some communities do it. Because the thing about zoning is that chapters really, you can't really always look at one chapter and say, I understand what this means, without being able to look at definitions and look at, other components. And so it's really hard to do it in a comprehensive way. That's why we need to, there are milestones along the way that we have to get agreement on. We have to get agreement on what are the districts and are they changing? What are the dimensional standards? What are the uses? Where are they allowed? Where are they not allowed? And then there's some outlier things like, are we changing your sign regulations, or and then there's this section we call our specific use standards. So it's like, how many of those are going to be? Are we going to have standards for, like I was telling I this, we have some communities that have developed standards for, they call them alternative financial services. And then basically, those are the check cashing places, and they set standards for so many of these per 1,000 people. Or I've seen them for the charitable container centers, that they drop off parking lots. Standards for those. There's a whole list of things we can go through and say, is this a Riverside issue? Do we need to develop standards for this? So we create that list. And there's just big pieces of this that we get agreement on, and then we go write it. So we're not going to go in there and say, well, they really should this, but we're going to put this back in because we like it. No, it's like, what are the standards of this community? I've been in a project where, one of the big trends in zoning these days is trying to limit parking requirements. It's like, there's a huge trend where communities are just like, we're done requiring parking, like as a formula. So you're building a grocery store, you decide how much parking you need, and then that's what they provide. And we were in this community where like, this is what we're doing, we're just getting rid of all this. We get to the end and they're like, oh, actually, no, we want to put that back in. You know, so it's like, we didn't come at them and say, well, you really should do that because that's the trend. We're like, whatever you want, whatever your standards are, we can help you develop what the numbers should be based on, you know, the standards that exist for that use or whatever. But we're not going to force the community to do something they don't want to do. So this is a reflection of you, right? What are the values of the community? And it's also, that's challenging because when you have a comprehensive plan is looking to the future, right? And so if you just want to endorse what you have out there today, we don't need a comp plan. It's like, let's just go write standards that helps you keep getting more of what you have. But you're looking forward and saying, we need something different. We want to create a town center. We want, you know, the things that I listed on the slide. It's like, so we need to help you write standards to get you there. That will challenge people. That can challenge people, you know, and so, because people are used to just doing things the way they've always done them, right? And we're trying to bring this at you from a different perspective and said, instead of just thinking about doing it the same way, let's talk about, you know, what are the standards we want for this? How tall should buildings be in this area? Instead of just thinking about, well, if it's this tall, that's this many stories, and if you do the math on square footage, now you need 800 parking spaces. I'm like, no. We're not going there. We're saying, what is the type of development you want in this corridor, and then we'll get the parking. And so, because if you value this, then you have to have other values over here. But if you just value parking, then it's a backward equation and get you to really 1-story or 2-story building on a big lot. So, you know, we break it up in pieces and we'll work with you on those standards, and then we'll get there. And it'll be your code. We're just going to build it for you.
Well, and
That was a really long answer, I'm sorry.
you keep saying your code, but, and maybe I'm just hearing pieces of things. I do have a headache, so. But you keep referring to, you know, staff, but you got resident community, or commissions and a steering committee that are going to have pretty strong opinions as well. And we're the ones that, you know, they're hired. We're the ones out there getting beat up on Facebook and at the grocery store and get to spend like 2 hours in an aisle at Kroger's.
Well, I will tell you, if you have a resident who's getting excited about, you know, dimensionals going from 12 to 20, or a side yard going from 6 to 8, you know, then they should be on the committee. You know, I don't think that that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. The process that we're going to use is we're going to be working with your staff. And a lot of this stuff is very mundane, right? It's stuff that only people like me care about. And you may not care about all of it, but some of it. But we'll be working with your staff, and then we'll present something to your steering committee for them to provide review and provide feedback. I don't want to, we're going to use feedback we've gotten from the community to inform what gets written, right? So that's why we're doing this survey. But we'll work with Naya and whoever else on the team to put forward a draft and pieces that you get feedback on.
There are a process,
So-
and just to build on that, there are a process, and I think I want to get to for the steering committee to put meaningful input in. So that's when I mentioned before, the districts, we need those as a milestone for them to tell us, what are these districts that we're proposing right for our community? Do we want these residential districts to look like this? Or do we want the corridors to have more form-based? That is what we're going to put before the steering committee for them to give that feedback. Can you understand these tables? Do these tables look right? Are they user-friendly? We're going to be workshopping that with the steering committee, so you guys can give us feedback. We have meetings in the schedule for that. We're going to be communicating with you guys through email and set in-person meetings for that.
Yeah.
We also have community meetings that are going to be part of this process for, during the, I'll call it the planning stages, and when we're codifying this. So there's going to be time for the community to give their feedback as well.
And I should also add too that, you know, we, I feel like a broken record. We, in a variety of meetings, in a variety of formats, at a variety of community events, are, I feel like, constantly trying to encourage people to get involved. And I'll challenge anybody that's watching this video, anybody that walks in this building, anybody that wants to be involved in this process, we will make sure that you get involved in a way that makes sense for you. But to Naya's point and Todd's, this is not an exclusive process. If folks want to get involved right now, they can go fill out the survey. The links are on our website. If you have interest in participating in the steering committee, we'll get you plugged in. There will be all sorts of opportunities all along the way for that public input to happen. And then the capstone of all of it is that those opportunities eventually roll up to the planning commission, being briefed and then acting on these things. And then it goes to city council. So this is a multi-step, multi-layered cake, a very deep process that we're embarking upon. And if anybody's interested, we are here to help get them plugged into that however it makes the most sense for them.
I'd just add one more thing. I mean, we are experts at this. I mean, we are currently, the firm, we're currently working on 24 zoning codes right now around the country. They're everywhere from Long Island to northern Wisconsin, several in Ohio. I mean, we've done this a lot. I can tell you that we can't write this by committee, but we can, the way that we've seen this work well is we get the feedback, we get the input, we agree on drafts with your staff. They understand the community. I know they're not going to necessarily have to stand in Kroger's and have the conversation, but they know where the starting point should be, and then you put forward that for community input. So
And
Well,
while
I'd
we're
say-
leaving- oh, sorry, go ahead.
I would say that piece I agree with. They know the starting points. And I think Naya and Josh has done really good in trying to get to know our community in that. But I think some of us know the community very well and have been involved for a very long time. And I think that those opinions and those conversations need to happen as well. And I thought that was part of the steering committee. And I think you've got some, people who have been on the different commissions and have been involved in that there, as well as on planning commission. I mean, you've got some very experienced people on planning commission too. And I just want to make sure there's enough time that once you have kind of worked through this, that there's going to be enough time, because I see this commission as really going through things before we send it on to council.
Oh, no doubt. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Everyone is going to have their opportunity to provide input. And your steering committee, I mean, we're not going to exclude anyone from the process. Because, listen, I've been a planning director. The last thing that I want is for Naya, or for Josh, or anyone in this group to be sitting here, and it's the planning commission public hearing, you're ready to adopt this, and all of a sudden there's a room full of people who are mad. We're trying to avoid that.
We've been there and we've
Well,
done that.
I've done it too. It's painful, right? So this is why we build community engagement into this process. And what we are doing. What's that?
This is not the first rodeo.
Every community has.
My second planning commission meeting was a meeting that we had to move from the old city chambers out to the fire department's bay, and there still was standing room only. And, yeah, it was very contentious. Yeah, and a lot of that because we were changing districts. We were turning certain, what was industrial area to B2, or residential to B2, or B2 to residential. Like, huge changes were happening because somebody just overlaid a map. I mean, Tony was more involved in it with me. It was only my second meeting. And
I wasn't the driver there.
no.
Well, I can tell you right now, we're not proposing to do any of that. We're proposing to rewrite your zoning code. If you all want to change maps, that's going to be your choice.
Well, and I'm not saying that some of the map may not need to be changed. Okay, I'm nowhere saying that that's not the case. I'm just saying that, like you said before, it's about the education and bringing that stuff up, and how are we going to educate residents
Sure.
and not have someone, all of a sudden end up with a piece of property they can't sell to someone because it's zoned now B2, but it's been residential for 75, 80 years. It's things like that we want to make sure that we're looking at. We went through it, we've been through it, we've been living it for the last 18 years, maybe?
Yeah, and what happened with this current UDO was a previous manager decided we were just going to take another community's UDO and drop it into ours and make some tweaks to it. And it was a very different community than Riverside is.
Yeah. And it was something in order to get it done quick. So I just want to make sure that we're really, and I know there is a timeline and there needs to be a timeline, don't get me wrong, but that we're really taking and having these commissions that are already put together, as well as anyone else out there that wants to add feedback versus, whether it's the community meetings, the surveys, being on one of the, the steering committee or whatever. We're really taking all of that information and going to look at that and see how it can fit, if it can fit. It may not, but in some ways, I think we can be very, proactive about that and come away with absolutely the best code possible for our residents and our businesses. And that's what I want. I just want the best code and not a lot of this, how can we get around what's written in this section because of this? Maybe we can, translate it here. How can residents, the gentleman tonight, was told years ago he couldn't do it. Now he can because someone's willing to make that work. But he should have just been able to do it as per the code was written, So things like that. And I think we're kind of on the same page. I think it's just a different way of maybe putting it. And it's just a, concern. I don't want to see us adopting something just because we need to get it done.
Yeah, I think what he's expressing, just like any of these meetings, we're just going to be facilitating a lot of the communication, and that's just how he's, presenting the process. But there will be community involvement because we can't make this a successful code without having those values from the community inserted in part of this code.
Well, you know me, I like roundtable.
Yeah.
A lot comes out of that, I think, by, talking in groups and coming up, because you may have one way of thinking of it, but then as you start talking, you realize there's maybe a better way of saying it or maybe a little bit better way of tweaking it. So
So like
that's
some of the things that planning commission has already talked about, there was a list of section of the code that you guys wanted to tackle. I've already shared that
Right.
with Todd and his team. Even things that you've already looked at, the backyard chickens, the signs, our landscape section, all of that has been shared, and he knows those are things that are pretty much at the top of our list because our community said so.
Right.
Our planning commission said so. So
Okay.
they've already started looking at those things as sections of our code that really need to be looked at.
Okay.
And so I think that's what we're saying, like, going through staff. Correct me if I'm wrong.
All right. Any other questions for Zone Co? Okay. All right.
I said this was enlightening.
Okay. Matters by commission. Mr.
No.
Hairston?
Nothing
Mr.
for me.
Rogers? All right. Staff, anything else? Legal?
No, Madam Chair, thank you.
Ms. Holt? Mr. Roush? All right. Seeing no further information on our agenda or any other agenda items, this meeting is adjourned.